Hello and welcome to the session where we will look at Sujati's DevOps reference architecture. Myself, Naveen Mangtani, I'm a manager consultant at Sujati Houston unit and I belong in A&T practice. My passion is all about ALM, DevOps, Visual Studio Team Services, and Microsoft Azure. Today we will look at the reference architecture application, Visual Studio Team Services, from the design point of view, and then from the QA automation testing. Then we will dive into the continuous builds, the continuous releases, and the application monitoring. Overall, we will see these aspects of DevOps implemented in our demo application. So let's take a look at it. What you see is the front page of that demo application. It's a web application based out of MVC pattern. It has a few entities like owners and leases, and it has a charts page. So this is how the site looks like. Now, as you can see, it's basically a CRUD application maintaining owners and leases, and the graphical page where you see a chart that shows monthly average leases signed by owners. Here is some of the reference links that can be useful. I just jotted them down for your sake. Now we will be going through this list, and for that to go over, I'll be switching to a web version of VSTS. So here is the dashboard screen of Visual Studio Team Services. As you can see, I have configured quite a few widgets to showcase from the requirements point of view. You have features and work assigned items. Then from the builds perspective, we have a build status chart that shows you if there is any build failure or success. Then we have a chart on testing, number of tests executed, and if there is any failures. And finally, we have a status of the deployment. As we can see, we have environments like dev, test, and prod, and the deployments on those. So you can configure many more widgets for project reporting, but for now this gives you kind of an overall summary. Let's look at the Kanban board. So under the work backlogs, this is your backlog view Kanban board. It allows users to daily track their work and monitor the progress during the iteration and the sprints. On this list of backlogs, you can see for that iteration the work that was assigned and then whether the work was done or not. I have a whole separate video on the VSTS and the features of VSTS, so do watch another video that's listed in the training list as well. So let's look at the source code and the Visual Studio. So you can connect to this team project using Team Explorer under the home page, and as you see, I'm connected to the MVC web app team. This is the solution for the web application, and this is how it looks like. It's categorized logically with database. This database is a SSDD project. It allows the database changes to be stored in the repository and versioned, as well as we build, it generates a DACPAC file that gets used by the release manager for deployment into Azure, SQL Azure. Then we have the development folder, under which we have the web, the repositories, the models, and the business services. It's a typical MVC application. The web will have the views, the models, and the controllers. Today we will make a change in one of the chart view to change the colors, and then we will see how that change is submitted into the repository. Based on that, how the builds gets triggered and the releases happen. So we will take a look at that as well in a while. Then you also have a QA folder under which you will see various types of functional tests, coded UI test, Selenium test. Then you have a unit test as well, and then you will also see some load tests. So we will take a look at it more in depth as we submit the changes. Then we have a demo folder. Here we usually showcase the deployment of resources in Azure environment, especially like web apps or SQL DBs. So there is a separate demo project for that. And then we have an IntelliTest demo as well, where you can generate the unit tests and increase your code coverage. Also, I would like to showcase one additional feature that this application has, that is the static analysis of the source code. So here we have a SonarQube installed. The SonarQube server as well as the scanner is installed on this machine. It's a virtual machine hosted in Azure environment. And as we can see, I have configured our application. It shows you the quality gate was passed during the last build, and it also reports that there are additional some technical debt that needs to be addressed. You have code smells, some duplication of the code, some C# and JavaScript rules are in effect that are generating this metrics. And under the measures tab, as you can see here, it gives you ratings based on reliability, maintainability, security tags. So as we browse through these various tabs, it will actually give you some more in-depth ideas on where it thinks the remedy needs to be applied. So under security also, it will showcase some of the JavaScript files looks like they need some work here. And then from the maintainability point of view, it has also detected that there are some code smells that needs to be addressed. There is some technical debt, then some code duplication. So you get kind of a various aspects from the code quality under SonarQube, and it gives you a dashboard as well. This is by default the setup that comes out of the box once you install and configure it. It gives you some of the metrics of lines of code in the source code, and then by configuration I meant you have to have a configuration with the TFVC or the Git repository from where it fetches your source. And let's submit one change. So for that we will modify some chart colors. In the views you have charts folder. Let's open this file, and let's say you want to see some red color, so let's copy this here, save this change, assuming that my requirement is to show the average percentage line in red. So I made that change, and I will make sure that it compiles on my local, do a rebuild. Okay, once the rebuild is completed, take a look at the pending changes. It shows you the file that you modified, and then you can associate this requirement that was created in the work items. Let's assume that was 100, for example. Not there, I'm sorry, here under this part. And if you see, well, that was mostly the task related for logging. However, I'm associating it, assuming that this is for the demo purpose, so I'm associating it with this change, and modify chart line color to red. Okay, so once we submit this change, we'll go on the website and see our change, and we look at the code, change sets, shows that I have submitted this change. Now we have configured continuous integration and continuous deployment, so we will look at the builds. and as we can see, the build has already started. Now one other area when it comes to build is we are using a private agent that is hosted on a virtual machine, and so you can take a look at that. Let's minimize this, and this is our private agent that is running in the here. It's running in an interactive mode right now. It says it's running a build. Okay, so let's go back to the website and let's take a look at the build. Here you can see we have configured the build definition to execute these steps. Each time a code change is submitted, it will execute these same steps each time. And what it does is it accumulates the sources from the repository, then it makes sure that all the NuGet packages are applied, and then it checks the connection with our SonarQube server, whether it can connect or not, and then it runs a compilation of the source code using the C# compiler, and on top of that it runs some unit tests. Okay, and as we can click here to see, there are some, scroll to the bottom of this log. Yeah, there were some tests found and they were executed in 12 seconds, and then the results are getting published, and after that it is executing the source static analysis on the source code, and that will be our SonarQube that will look at all the source code, run through the rules, and then update the dashboard that we just saw recently. So that basically is what SonarQube does. We can also look back again at the agent server where we had the SonarQube here. Okay, go back to the home page. Yeah, so as you can see that this is the web application, and the quality profile is checking quality gate green, it was red. Quality gate, that was in last year when the chain gate was red, and if the gate is red, it doesn't let the builds to proceed further. Okay, so let's go back to our build agent to see what happened. So it has completed the analysis of the source code, and as you can see the log is generated and creates the summary report, uploads that report. The quality gate associated has passed. Okay, that's nice. And then after that it generates a couple of artifacts that are used by the release manager. So one of the artifacts we are creating is a drop. The default name drop is being used. It compiles the web application, creates a zip folder of that gets used for deployments, and then there is an additional task of generating and publishing the DACPack file for SQL Azure deployments, and then finally it adds an annotation. This is for the application insights where you can see those annotations. Okay, so that kind of involves the build definition. Let's take a look at the summary of this build. So if I click here, this gives me a summary of the build, and it shows you basically source, from which branch it was picked up, and any issues that were found during the build. Like there are some of the issues that needs to be addressed, and these are all warnings. And then it shows you the test summary here, a number of tests that were executed or failed, the code coverage percentage, then also some work items that are associated with this build, and finally the static code analysis. So quite a detailed summary here on the build side. Now let's take a look at the deployments. Since we have configured, as we can see here, release 117 is in progress. And if you look at the logs, it will show you what the release definition is doing. All the build task and the release tasks, they are all PowerShell scripts, and they are executed by the agent. And what we can see is it's downloading the artifacts, and then it is checking for the Azure resources for ARM templates, and it will either create if it doesn't exist, or it will update incrementally if it exists. And then after that, it is picking up that DACPAC file and deploying it on SQL Azure. Once the DACPAC is completed, it deploys the website. So I will show you the website here in a while. Let me show you the websites as well. So this is dev, test, and prod. So let's open the charts page on the production, and after the deployment is finished on production, we'll refresh it to see our change. We could do it on test as well. Go to the charts. Okay, and now right now we see the line color is in yellow gold. It will change into red once the deployment is done. So that will be the test, and let's go back to our release definition and we'll take a look at what's happening on the definition here. So click on edit. This is our dev environment, and as I said, it will run through these list of tasks. This one is for ARM template deployment, and this one is about the database deployment. This is on the web app deployment, and finally there are some Selenium tests that are being run on the dev environment. Then on the test environment, we have those 4 similar tasks, and additionally we have a web performance test and a cloud load test. So we'll take a look at these few tests once we get there, but I just wanted to show you the definition here in the meantime. And here on the production also you have similar tasks. So let's go back under releases. Okay, yep, and release 117. Also, I will talk a little bit about these various tabs here. So this gives you the summary page. As we progress with the deployments, you will see more and more stuff coming up on the summary page. And artifacts, these are the artifacts basically used by this release that are generated by the build process. And variables, these are reusable variables that being stored here so that we do not have to hard code it during the tasks. This can be reused. Then we have commits tab, under which you will see whatever the work items have been submitted since the last release, the change sets. And then finally, yeah, this is the work item that was associated with that particular change. And here you will see the list of tests that are run. Right now you don't see anything. I think it is still running some tasks. And the history tab shows the changes done on the so far, the changes that have been completed. Okay, we were at the logs. This is where you will usually see the details of what's happening in the background. So we saw that it has completed the dev deployment. And then we are taking a look at the deployment to the test environment. And the first 4 tasks we saw are similar to the dev environment, and then we have some additional tasks, for example the web performance. Here, as we can see, it has added the 50 users concurrently hitting the website, and it has completed that test. So we have a separate test section here that allows you to take a look at all the test summaries that are performed on the team project. So if I look at here in a new tab, it shows you what tests have been performed. So you can filter it based on all, and it will show that it just recently 4 minutes ago it ran one performance test. To see the results of the performance test in detail, you can double click that line item. It takes you here, shows the response time was pretty much 0, requests 0. It seems like something wasn't done properly on 0 requests per second. Yeah, and take a look at the charts. Yeah, let's take a look at the one before that. For example, this one. In here, as you can see, it shows you the average response time less than a second, with 50 users concurrently hitting the website, and the number of requests per second were 55. No errors were reported. And let's go back to the summary and some of the charts, for example, here, and it shows you response time when 50 users were on the site, and the average page time that it shows to load. Similarly, requests per second with 50 users concurrently on there, and the way it behaved with requests per processing of the requests per second, it kind of stabilized at 104 requests per second. Similarly, we have a load test, which we can go back again on this list page here. It's currently performing a load test, and I'll show you the results of a previous load test that was ran. This one, for example, here it gives you the metrics like the load of users. 100 users were on it, response was 1.1, and it was browsing through different pages on the site. Some charts here, it shows different, like here you see the user load increasing, and then it stays with that same number, the max number of 100, and with the increase in the number of users, initially the response time went up, and then it kind of stabilized at it. Then throughput as well, you can see the number of pages per second that were being hit. It went up as the user load was going up, and then it kind of stabilizes in this range. So the idea is that if you are making some performance improvements on your application, so you might have ran some performance tests, load tests before, and then after that you made some performance tests, and then you want to compare the two different tests from before and after. So you could select the two, and then you can say compare the two tests, so that way it will tell you the comparison for the before and after. It's a pretty neat tool for doing those kind of tests. And go back to all load tests. Let's take a look at the release, what's happening on the release here. So I see that it has just finished cloud load test as well. Okay, it has completed the load test. Nice. The next step that we see here is the deployment to production environment. and the way it is configured is it's waiting on a approval. So there is a manual intervention. You can see that in the light here, and also the same you can see on the summary screen that it has not deployed. Okay, so to do that you can click on this approve, and it says okay, I can pretty much approve, or there is a list of other users who can approve this deployment. So let's go ahead and say approve. Then in the logs it will start executing the set of tasks for the environment. Okay, let's close the load test and go back to this site here, the dev site. So this is the test environment, and doing a refresh on the test site page for the charts. Let's see what happens. It had a yellow gold line and now you can see red. So the change has been deployed and you can instantly see the changes here. You will see the same for the other environments as they finish up. And let's go back here. Okay, it's currently doing a deployment of the ARM template for. So I will show you the Azure Portal where I've configured all the resources. Under resource groups, under this sample resource group, I have, for example, 3 websites: the dev, test, and prod. And on this particular task, it has updated the production site here based on the ARM template. Okay. And similarly for the SQLs, so you can see there's a SQL server hosted and then 3 different databases. So the SQL server is hosting those databases here. Okay, and the DAC pack is the one that gets refreshed on top each time with the deployment. And then execution. Now it's time for the web app deployment on production side. As we can see that it had failed to deploy the web application. Okay, and we will have to investigate this one, why it failed. Seems like something is happening on the Azure websites. Invalid resource, could not complete. Failed to deploy. Could not complete this remote. An operation timed out. Yep, I did see some slowness on the refresh of the sites. Invalid resource. So we will re-trigger this, redeploy on production. Okay. Redeploy to production. Number 117. Approve it. And it has found an agent. Okay, that's nice. It's downloading the artifacts. And the next task is to deploy the web application for NMRG. Okay. Then the next set is to deploy your DACPAC file. And once that gets completed, it moves on to the next task, that is to deploy the website. This is where earlier it was timing out deployment on when it was trying to connect the remote server. Timed out on this one with some error code. That was in the previous attempt, and now again looks like it. And it failed again for timing out. Yeah, okay, we will try this again after a while. So my previous attempts, it was failing the deployment, and let's try again. So we open the same release if we have to try to redeploy it. And let's take a look at this one. It was timing out earlier, so what we could do is we can manually go ahead and say deploy on production instance. Okay, once I click deploy, we can look at the logs and see how that happens. So this was the two attempts that we tried earlier, and it failed on connecting the remote server for the web app deployment, and we will see how that goes now. In the meantime, let's take a look at the build server again, and release completed, but it failed. Let's see if it picks up the build again. It's waiting on approval. Okay, approved it, and it's waiting on this build. Okay, found the build agent. Yeah, it's running the release task now. Minimize this one, and once the artifacts are available to it, it will look for the deployment of the resource. Okay, it finished that resource deployment. The next thing is the SQL DACPAC, and also in the meantime I will open the site. Well, this is the production site, and we still see that the deployment didn't happen. And once the deployment happens, we refresh this page to see the changes. So it's deploying the web application now. It was able to deploy the site, and it seems like it finished the deployment. Okay, very good. Okay, let's take a look at the summary. It gives you the details of the build number based on which it did the deployment, the work items associated with the change, the load test, and the results of the performance test. Any particular issues that were occurred, they are listed here. Okay, the next thing is to go and refresh the site here for changes that came out. Okay, it shows you the new changes got in and published. Okay, that concludes our demo on the overview of the reference architecture for DevOps. I thank you everyone for taking time to watch this video. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye bye.